everyone. This is Michael Jacobs coming to you from Long Island, New York. We're coming to the end of another golf season as we head into the fall and winter. And I just wanted to congratulate all the fellow peers who were recognized in Golf Digest as the best teachers in America and the best teachers in their state. Well earned, and it's nice to see that Golf Digest recognizes all the hard work. What I wanted to talk about today is a little something that you can use over the winter to start working on your golf game. And one of the most common things I hear is that, Mike, the way that you and Dr. Nesbitt break down a golf swing can seem pretty complicated. Well, it is, but it's important. And it's important for Dr. Nesbitt to break it down the way that he has in the convention that he's designed. And it's up to me then to distill it down so that golfers can use it with quick little tips. And that's why we're writing the book, Instant Swing Fixes. One of my teaching partners and I are putting together a book called Instant Swing Fixes that takes the Nesbitt Jacobs 3D curriculum and distills it down to quick little tips. So let's use the information that we have uncovered with our research to give you a little tip to work on your takeaway. And I think during the winter, if you can just improve your takeaway, you'll get off to a good start next season. Now, you've heard things throughout the history of golf, things like a one-piece takeaway, or try to stay connected, or do different things on the takeaway. Should I try to use my hands? Should I just use the bigger muscles in my body? And I think people are pretty confused about how to take the club back. Now, is it important? Well, in the whole duration of a golf swing, errors that you make in the takeaway, you could make up for them, but I always say, why don't we smooth out the takeaway, get off to a good start, and it'll make the rest of the swing a lot easier to do. Now, back to the one-piece takeaway idea. And this is where we're going to introduce one of the things that we've often discussed, and that's the force applied to the grip point. Now, if I took a club, and I'm going to keep this real simple for every golfer out there, if I took a club and I just balanced it on my finger, you'd see it balanced somewhere in this area, a little closer to the club head than the grip. So somewhere right around there is like the center of mass of the club. That's what they call it. So it's just off the balance point here where I have it on my finger. So that's an important spot to take note of. So if I push or pull on the club, if I do it along the club will just move. But if I push or pull sideways on the club, so to speak, it's going to make the club swing around. And it could swing around in 3 different directions. That's why we call the rotation of the club alpha, beta, gamma, if you read our book. So let's keep it simple now with the one-piece takeaway idea. So if you start your backswing and you push and pull on the grip, where the club head kind of lags behind, what you have to understand is that when you're doing that, the club is going to want to move this way. It's going to want to rotate this way. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, with the way that you're gripping the club, put a torque on the club to stop it from continuing too much this way. So if you're trying to get tension out of your swing, or you're trying to get a little better direction on your takeaway, understanding that if you push sideways with like a lagging club head takeaway, or that one-piece takeaway, you're going to have to apply a torque to stop it from rotating too much this way. And the same as if you put a forward press on the club. So if I do a big forward press on the club as I take it back, this club is going to want to rotate like this. So I'm going to have to use some torque to stop it from coming too far back this way. So the more you push and pull on the side directions as you take it back, the more you're going to have to apply torque to control the club on the takeaway. So how do we get a little better at it? Well, what I always recommend for my students, after we've got them in a good setup position and where we feel like all the links of the body are in a good place to make a good athletic type movement, what we like to do is we like to blend a little swing of the club as we push and pull it back. So what that'll do is that'll allow me to stay a little more relaxed, especially down in my wrists and forearms, by letting the club swing as I pull it back, and then we could reduce how much we have to counteract any extreme pushes or pulls on the club in the takeaway. So that would be the swinging action of the club this way, but there's another important one too, and that's if I push or pull, if I push the club up or pull it down as I take away. And what I mean by that is if I make a backswing and my first move, and I see a lot of students doing this, and this is how I explain it to them, and this is how you could use understanding force and torque in a golf swing to your advantage, is if I take the club and I push it up as I start my backswing, this club is going to want to rotate this way. We call this beta rotation. And what's going to happen is then I'm going to have to apply a torque to stop it from doing it too much. And what that does to players, from my experience and in my opinion, what that does is that freezes up and locks their wrists up and puts them in a position then where that club whips around, and then they have some tough swing movements to work on. But the root cause might be somewhere in the takeaway. So if you're making a backswing and you're forward pressing and pushing the handle up, chances are you're applying quite a bit of torque to offset a lot of the movements that's happening in your early backswing, and you don't even realize it. So from this direction, as you're working on your takeaway, try to feel like the handle isn't really getting pushed up or down too much, and on the early backswing, as you take it back and let it swing back, try to keep the way that you push and pull the club a little smoother on the backswing, and I think you'll get off to a much better start. As you near the end of the backswing, what you want to understand is that the motion that's in the club is going to get sent back to you before we then transfer it back to the club. So if you're making a swing and there's a lot of motion in the club, and then you're trying to overcome that when you're making your downswing, you might want to understand that the motion that's in the club is going to come back into us, and then we're going to put it back into the club. So those are some little ideas to help your takeaway. Understand, this is one of our Jacobs 3D images, and this is the linear force applied to the grip point on the backswing. And if you look in our book, Elements of the Swing, you can see that the little force quivers are much bigger. So the magnitude of the force is much greater in the downswing, and on the backswing, it's a lot smaller. And, you know, that's why the backswing's slower. So you could see that you're hardly able to see these force quivers. So the backswing is more than just how you displace yourself. It's how you manage and interact with the club. And that's one of the things that's been interesting working with Dr. Nesbitt that we've been discussing recently as we build our Alpha Man full body analysis is he's really interested, and he's found it interesting that how we coach the backswing is really important. It's more than just how we displace and try to come down. So hopefully those takeaway ideas you could use this winter when you're working on your game, and I hope everybody had a great 2017 golf season. Michael Jacobs, thanks for joining us.